to ThinkTech. This is a ThinkTech special with Keli'i and me. That's Keli'i Akina. He's the CEO of the Grassroot Institute, and he's the host of Ehana Kako on Mondays. But he agreed to join me today to take the 3 to 4 block and talk about issues relating to statehood, to Admissions Day, because today is Admissions Day. Welcome to the show.
Well, that's right. Aloha to you, Jay.
Aloha.
Always great to be with you. Today's August the 22nd, and it is the 56th celebration of Hawaii's admission to the Union.
Okay, well, the first thing is we're going to take a little clip that you made about Admissions Day. Let's run that now, and when we come back, we'll analyze all about Admissions Day and the issues that are relevant today.
Aloha, this is Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute, on the occasion of celebrating Hawaii's statehood anniversary. As an American, I'm proud that Hawaii is a state of the Union. The 50th state represents our nation's breadth and diversity. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, we span the globe, not for domination, but for beneficence. What we practice and live within our borders, being one nation under God, indivisible, extends across the world with liberty and justice for all. As a Hawaiian, I'm proud to be part of the great people of the United States. No other nation could better fulfill the aspirations of Hawaiians as expressed in the 1840 Constitution of the Hawaiian Kingdom. God hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on the earth in unity and blessedness. God has also bestowed certain rights alike on all men. These are the values embedded within America's most cherished document, the Declaration of Independence. In 1959, Governor Neil Blaisdell presided over the greatest celebration Hawaii has ever seen, following a resounding 93% plus affirmation of statehood by all people of Hawaii. Molokai, with a preponderantly native Hawaiian population, led the way in the vote. Today, we would do well to celebrate again the great union of the United States and Hawaii. Current distractors or detractors who seek to undo this union are truly a minority, although a vocal one. I have traveled throughout these islands, visited the Hawaiian homestead lands, spoken with those who are too shy to go public, talked with aged kupuna and young workers. The silent yet vast majority of ethnic Hawaiians, like myself, are proud to be Hawaiian and proud to be American. That's worth celebrating, and it's worth celebrating in the company of all Americans from multiple ethnic backgrounds who can all rightly call themselves Hawaiians. Aloha no.
Hey, we're back, we're live, we're here, and that was a great little piece you did, Keli'i. Why don't you summarize that for me? What did you really mean to say?
Well, at the very heart of it, I believe it's important for us to celebrate this great union between Hawaii and the United States of America. There are so many of us who are proud to be Hawaiians as well as proud to be Americans, and really there's no contradiction between the two. A lot of times we don't hear that today. And you know, Jay, why is it that here in Hawaii we don't celebrate statehood the way, for example, in Texas? There are barbecues and fireworks and guns being shot off and so forth. There's hardly mention of it today other than some people getting a day off of work.
Was it always thus?
No, not at all. In fact, Hawaii probably had one of the greatest celebrations of statehood of any of the 50 states. If you take a look at the footage and the newsreels as well as the photographs of 1959 when statehood was achieved, it looks like Victory in Europe Day. You could walk down the street, Jay, and wearing your sailor costume, any young lady would give you a kiss. It was just a grand celebration.
What happened? Something has happened between 1959 and now to make this holiday, which is a grand holiday all around the country, to make this holiday go flat in Hawaii. What happened?
You're absolutely right. That's a question worth asking. But let me punctuate once again how grand the celebration was. There was a 93% plus affirmation of statehood by the people of Hawaii, Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians together. In fact, the geography or the region that had the highest percentage of yes votes for statehood, it was Molokai, which had the highest concentration of Native Hawaiians at the time. The year after statehood, we had our first elections. and it was the highest voter turnout in the entire United States. So getting to your question, we have come a very, very far way. What do you think could be part of the reason that we don't celebrate?
Well, I think it's complacency on the one hand, but probably more pronounced is its sovereignty. Sovereignty movement has undermined patriotism. It's undermined our relationship with the United States. And gee, I hadn't thought about it much, but I guess I would agree with you that we don't celebrate Admissions Day. We don't celebrate our relationship with the United States nearly as much as we did. And there are people who don't like the military here. There are people who don't like being associated with the country. This is very, very disturbing. How did we get there? What has changed to make people not like the country?
Certainly, you know, while there is that sentiment where people are free, obviously, to vocalize their discontent with the United States, foreign policy, domestic policy, I want to go back to something that you mentioned before. You put out the thought that maybe it's the sovereignty movement that is responsible for our not celebrating. When I look at that, I'm not so sure it's the sovereignty movement itself for a couple of reasons. First of all, we are the land of the First Amendment. People have always had the right to praise their government or to object to the government, to burn flags and so forth. And that's part of what makes us America. So that in itself would not be a reason for failing to celebrate our statehood. Here's why I'm a little leery of saying it's the sovereignty movement. There aren't that many of us in Hawaii, whether it's the general population or Native Hawaiians, who are actually saying, let's have a separate sovereign nation. It's a really small minority. And it's not that minority that has caused the lack of celebration. It's probably been the response of our leadership, the response of our state government, the response of people who, for some reason, have found that it's more convenient to be politically correct and not to do anything.
Be sympathetic with the sovereignty movement.
Absolutely. It's very easy to be sympathetic because some of the history has been rewritten. If we really compare the condition of Native Hawaiians today with what they were for the average Native Hawaiian 100 or 200 or 300 years ago, the presence of the United States during the latter portion of that time has brought about tremendous opportunity. The opportunity to own land, to build homes and families, to get education, to start businesses and so forth. And so really, I think the rewriting of history to say that the presence of the United States has been a bad thing for Native Hawaiians is part of why maybe some people are a little cautious. Sometimes, as you say, there's a feeling of being sympathetic. Sometimes there's a sense, poor Hawaiians, they lost everything, and that generates a sense, well, let's not play up too much that now they're part of the United States.
Well, I think that is a part of the process with Governor Ige and TMT. When he went up there, he was sympathetic and he stopped construction. And that act of stopping construction has effectively delayed construction from that day till this. And I think he was trying to be sympathetic to the Hawaiian concerns. But as a matter of law, as a matter of, the law that applies in the state and in the country, there was nothing to support his action. And I'm very concerned about that. And I think what you said just now about the government being sympathetic to the sovereignty movement is absolutely true. But I'd like to offer that the sovereignty movement today is a lot stronger than it was in 1959. I don't think it existed in 1959. Somewhere in the middle, between 1959 and now, it emerged. I remember a short story, if I may. I remember one of my clients, which was a shopping center, called me one time and said, there's a fellow here who wants us to issue $1 million worth of gift certificates to him for Christmas. And I said, well, has he got $1 million to give you? And he said, no, that's the problem. We have a purchase order here from the sovereign nation of Hawaii, and they want us to accept this. And they told us to call Dan Inouye's office in Washington and see if he knew who the sovereign nation of Hawaii was. And we did. We called Dan Inouye's office in Washington, and we asked him if he knew who the sovereign nation of Hawaii was. And they said, yes, they knew, and the sovereign nation of Hawaii was a good thing. And they, were sympathetic with it. a point is, by the way, my advice to them, which I don't mind telling you, was don't take the purchase order. You're not going to get paid. But this was a long time ago.
Certainly.
And I think the sovereign nation of Hawaii was, at the time, it was really not serious. But it has gotten much more serious since then, hasn't it?
You're right. What we're really looking at is a much broader movement, and that is, over time, the advancement of Native Hawaiians as part of culture and part of society. And that advancement goes forth on a couple of fronts, and it's important to distinguish those two fronts. One front is the cultural renaissance, really. When I was in high school, I was very much part of a rebirth of the expressions of Hawaiian music and culture. I was part of a hula halau. I was the chanter for Winona Beamer's hula halau, the mother of Keolan Kapono. We had all these wonderful groups. It was a great time for the language, for the culture, for the history, and so forth. And that has gone forward along with the rise of Hawaiians in education, in social status, financially as well. Kamehameha Schools has graduated tens of thousands who are now in the upper middle class, if not doing better financially. But we have to separate that movement of cultural renaissance from political movements. You see, at about the 1980s, 1978, with the birth of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Governor John Waihee, a major delegate there at that time, we have coming to the forefront a political movement that relies upon a revisionist history, a history that says that the United States stole Hawaii from the Hawaiians, that the United States is perpetrating a prolonged occupation of Hawaii, and so forth. And
there was a woman at the astronomy conference last week who said that the TMT was a war crime.
Right,
a war crime.
That's one way to look at it as well. So that movement has gained much steam and much momentum, and yet it doesn't represent all Hawaiians. When it comes to the sovereignty movement, there are really two broad aspects of it. There are those who are looking for a governmental solution. Let's be like a Native American Indian tribe. This was the Akaka Bill. And this is the efforts of the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission now to create what would be a recognized Indian tribe. They're not trying to leave America. They're trying to get what might be considered a good deal in America. But then there's another movement that has grown, and that is those who don't want to have anything to do with the United States, those who appeal to the United Nations that the United States presence in Hawaii is an illegal military occupation.
Or the Secretary of State not too long ago.
That's right. It's well known that there are many voices coming out of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, some of them for the federal state recognition, but others who actually question whether Hawaii is under the jurisdiction of the United States. So this may sound confusing to people.
That strikes me as a really strange confluence, because they are a state agency funded with our tax money, funded with government appropriated funds, and at the same time they are taking an official position on behalf of a state agency for the proposition that this isn't a state, that they don't belong, that none of us are part of the United States. And I think that's a really questionable use of government money.
Well, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, which has been charged with the task of benefiting the Native Hawaiians from trust funds that are part of our state's Admission Act, it has many voices that are vying for control. And some of those voices are taking the position of saying the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is not your ordinary state agency. It has autonomy. And as a result, it's not subject to the sunshine laws, the information laws, or procurement laws with regard to money. And what this does is it allows some of the operators to move forward in ways that could, in their eyes, evade state accountability. What most people don't realize is that the Office of Hawaiian Affairs is a state agency accountable to all the state citizens. In fact, we vote every 4 years, every 2 years actually, for 4-year terms of the 9 trustees, which are staggered. And these are political offices like the legislature. But if people don't participate in those elections, we let the agency drift off by itself without accountability to the electorate.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to your point. about how the government in general is resonant and sympathetic with those in the sovereignty movement. And I don't know, will that burn itself out, do you think, Keli'i, or are we going to have increasing issues around that? That means increasing protests, increasing attempts to stand in the way of any kind of progressive initiatives. Does it mean that we're going to have less interest in celebrating Admissions Day?
Well, I'm not completely sure that the governor is, as you put it, sympathetic to sovereignty as a cause, either within the Office of Hawaiian Affairs or outside of it. It may look like that, but it's kind of early, I think, really to tell the foundations of Governor Ige's policy philosophy.
In some ways, it's early, but in other ways, it's late enough for us to have to take a break.
All right.
That's Keli'i Akina.
And that was a smooth move.
Grassroot Institute, and the host of Ehana Kako on Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock. And we're having a ThinkTech special today on Admissions Day, talking about the issues that relate to Admissions Day. We'll be right back after this short break.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on ThinkTech Hawaii. Center Stage airs every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and of course you can check out our archives on YouTube or on ThinkTech Hawaii anytime you like. Why should you do that? Because this is an arts show that I believe is making a difference in lives. We talk with artists of various ilk. We talk with painters and writers, playwrights, novelists, poets, sculptors, dancers, you name it, directors, actors, of course. And we don't only talk about what people do, but we talk about how they do it. And my favorite part of the conversation, we talk about why they do it. And it's really common on this show to hear people say, wow, I didn't think about it that way. And it's very common to hear people afterwards who have seen the show say the same thing. And I hear all the time that people are inspired by the conversations that we have. So why don't you join us and be inspired too? That's Center Stage on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. We'll see you Center Stage.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here. I'm Jay Fidell, that's Keli'i Akina. From time to time, we have our special shows. This is one of them, here on Admissions Day 2015. Keli'i, if you didn't know, but everybody does know, is the host of Ehana Kako on Mondays at 2 to 3 here on ThinkTech. So we're talking about the issues that might come up, and one of the issues that seems pervasive these days, it has emerged. You know, I mean, I considered this a serious issue 10 years ago, but it is certainly getting more serious now, and that is the issue of homelessness.
Oh, it's a terrible issue, not only for the homeless, and I can't imagine what many of them go through, especially now with families that are out there, but for the entire state. We recently were ranked as the state with the highest per capita population of homeless in the United States of America.
You know, and it's not that this happens by accident, and you can't blame the homelessness on the homeless. It's not their fault, really. You can find some who want to be homeless, but that's not the rule. And you can't blame it on people coming over on a plane. Somebody pays a state agency elsewhere pays their ticket so they can drop on these shores. And you can't blame it on the South Pacific Islands. No, it reflects problems in our society. Economic problems, structural problems, social problems.
That's right.
And you can track all of that back to those problems. And what it means is we are not going to solve homelessness until we solve those problems. I'm sorry to say. And that is serious because we don't even actually identify, we don't, as a community, even recognize the existence of some of these problems.
Well, Jay, you are absolutely right. We tend to look at the problem at the ground level. We see homeless on the sidewalks or near the hotels and so forth. So the first level of response is let's move them somewhere else. We see the houseless having needs for food, for clothing, for shelter. So our response is let's provide those needs. And there's nothing wrong with those needs being met. And I'm so grateful for charities, for churches, for institutions that are reaching out. But here's the problem.
It's Band-Aid.
Right, we need much more. That's not dealing with the fundamental question. What is causing the level of homelessness in the state of Hawaii. And this is where we really have to look at the research across the world and across the nation that focuses on economic and political systems. There are things we do not at the ground level, but at the policy level of state government, of federal government, that are actually responsible for the conditions in the state. One of them, Jay, is this, and I know I may rile a lot of feathers by saying this, but one of the causes is the way we create artificial scarcities. One of the greatest artificial scarcities here in Hawaii is land. When you look at it, we develop on about 2.5% to 3% of all of the island space. And we preserve the rest, or we reserve it for agriculture. We have very tough zoning laws. Now, I've talked to experts on this. If we were simply to open it up maybe 0.5% more and dedicate a significant amount of that to affordable housing, we could bring the price, the cost of land down significantly, at least for affordable homes, but we don't do it. The powers that be are very much committed to a scarcity of land, and this is where we have...
Offer, there's another
yes.
element in the same vein. Who is the largest landowner in the state of Hawaii? The state of Hawaii is the largest landowner. And it's very close to the vest about letting any of that land be used, you know, even temporarily for housing, for affordable housing. It's extraordinary that we are sitting here in a problem created by a scarcity of land when we have the land.
That's right, absolutely. Now, we're not talking about moving into the interior of the islands and damaging the aquifer and so forth. And we're not talking about high-rises all around the perimeter of the island. We're talking about maybe just allowing for development on 0.5% or a percentage more and regulating that. You see, even when we move homeless from one place to another place or into transitional shelters, there is just an absolute lack of affordable housing for them to go into after that. Not only are the homeless experiencing this, our middle class are experiencing this.
And some of those are going to get homeless.
Absolutely. A good number of homeless today are people who last month could not pay their mortgage or pay their rent. But they have jobs, they are upstanding citizens, their children are in school. Now they're doing everything that they've done before from their home out of their vans and so forth. Yeah. So what we need to do is change our land use policy. That's important. You know as well as I, Gavin Dawes, Land and Power in Hawaii, that the moment we talk about changing land use policy, we're dealing with
very large estates who won't tolerate that.
And not only that, we're dealing with a political structure that is highly vested in that. And so that would be...
And the real estate industry is highly vested in that.
There you go. So that's just one area. If you and I had all the time in the world today, we could look at about 10 different potential causes that if we reversed, could actually make a difference. Let me move on to another one, for example. The policy we have toward Hawaiian homelands. We have more than 10,000 Native Hawaiians that are on the waiting list. If you take a look at the surveys of homeless, Hawaiians make up a significant portion of the homeless. And yet, we're not populating those Native Hawaiian homelands. And here's a fundamental problem we have. Those lands are lease lands. How do you build generational wealth on leasehold land?
You don't.
You don't.
Which is a problem statewide. I mean, it's not just Hawaiian homelands, it's statewide.
Right, but for Hawaiians in particular, once the blood quantum of one's family drops, say your children marry outside of the Hawaiian race, and then your grandchildren fall below the blood quantum, however far we push that down, you lose the right to be able to have that land. And
so you can't leave it to them.
That's right.
They can't own it,
As
period.
a result, so when you have to sell it back at a below market rate in the system or lose it altogether. There are all kinds of problems because of the leasehold. You can't improve your home because you can't get the kinds of loans that the average person gets and so forth. But the bottom line is this. Here's a segment of the population that doesn't build wealth because they believe the American dream is to get leasehold land. Now, this is where the government is involved. You said the government is the largest landholder. Well, as it turns out, one of the largest land estates is the Hawaiian homelands. And the way it was set up in 1920 is such that you can calculate by the century when you will no longer have qualified Native Hawaiians, what happens to the landmass of the Hawaiian homelands when there aren't Hawaiians able to populate it any longer. It goes back to the state. So once again, you've got land and power and artificial scarcity control over that.
We need the great Mahele of 2015. We've needed it for a long time. We've needed it since the first great Mahele.
Well,
And
yes.
we're not likely to have it. And these problems, these structural problems are going to get worse and worse until we do.
That's right. You talk about the Great Mahele, which was a vision of Hawaii's monarchy, that Hawaiians could become great like Americans if they had private property ownership, a fundamental principle of any free nation. Unfortunately, the Great Mahele was also a government program. And so
It didn't work. It was politicized.
Absolutely. And as a result, to this day now, in terms of the commoners who still have in their family line the lots that they were able to get through the Great Mahele, it's only 1% of the commoners who have that. And so but that underscores what I was saying about the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, and that is we have to move from being the landlords of these Native Hawaiians to allowing them to take that land into their own hands and build generational wealth. Let me tell you one of the most tragic things I heard a year ago. I was talking to a former state senator from one of the neighbor islands. And he told me this. He said, Keli'i, we can't convert the leasehold land into fee simple for the Hawaiians. Our people are not smart. We will lose the land. And I just thought that benign paternal attitude is really a sign that we've turned government into a maternal nanny when it shouldn't be. And as a result, we cannot develop the kind of robust citizenry that we need to.
Right. And it turns into a giveaway that doesn't work, a giveaway that's not fair, a giveaway that causes, at the end of the day, resentment. And one of the elements that diminishes our zeal for Admissions Day is that resentment. I think that resentment runs through the community. People are not satisfied with the system. Not only the Hawaiian people, not only those who are sympathetic with the Hawaiian people, but a lot of people in the millennial generation, for example, people who don't have the American dream, who don't see the American dream, who don't have a level of hope on the
That's
American
right.
dream, and they are resentful. They think this doesn't work. Either they leave or they stay and grumble, but they don't think it works. And this takes me, I feel so strong about this that I need to take a break.
We'll be back.
We'll be back, you'll see.
Aloha, my name is PJ and I'm the host of Hawaii Sports Update. I am very interested in local sports and that's why I host the Hawaii Sports Update show. I bring in guests from Hawaii, I bring in guests from UH, I bring in guests from the community, I bring in big names, I bring in small names, I bring in all names that are community related and doing positive things, sports related in the community. Come join me every Tuesday at 1 p.m. here on Hawaii Sports Update. You can also join me on my golf tournament, the first annual PJ Sports Radio Show golf tournament. It's going to be held at Coral Creek. For any information, go to ThinkTech Hawaii, INC, and friend us. The PayPal and a summary of the event will be right there available for you. And don't forget to tweet us.
Okay, we're back, we're live, and we're crisp. And as a matter of fact, Keli'i has a few remarks he'd like to add about affordable housing, about land in Hawaii.
Well, Jay, in the last segment, you and I were talking about the fact that the solution will not come, that is the solution to homelessness and poverty, merely from ground level efforts. We need to recraft the way we deal with policy, the way we conceive of the role of government and so forth. You and I talked about two of the potential solutions. There are many. One, for example, is this, revisioning the way we do minimum wage. The studies across the nation show that when minimum wages go up, the employers at the lower level let go of people because it becomes too expensive. Do you know if we go down to the Kaka'ako area, we'll find able-bodied men and women who are willing to work for $5 an hour or for $7 an hour, but our legislature just boosted the upcoming minimum wage to $15 an hour. And I know you don't pay your people that now. I'm just kidding.
Cut!
But you see, when we take a look at multiple policies and ask the question, how do they impact those who are least advantaged, we can start recrafting. That's all I wanted to say. So that's one of the things we stand for at the Grassroot Institute, coming up with policies that the government can use that will ultimately benefit everyone?
Well, I don't know if it's intentional or maybe it is or just accidental, but the powers that be seem to be perpetuating minimum wage jobs. And the thing about increasing minimum wage is a reaction to that, except it really doesn't work the way people think. A lot of mom and pop businesses would be put out of business.
That's right.
And there would be no jobs.
The restaurant
Can't afford it.
Restaurant Association petitioned against it because they calculated the number of jobs and restaurants that would close.
Yeah.
The Chamber of Commerce of Honolulu petitioned against it. Grassroot Institute did. But the government went ahead because it sounds like it's helping people, but it's not really.
It helps an imagined constituency, but but where we should put the effort, I mean, first policy, not response to people making demands for giveaway from the government. Remember the days of grant and aids? They would line up in the corridors of the legislature. Everybody had a different give me. No, the government first has to look at policy, general policy, leadership policy. And the thing is, to improve the economy for the benefit of everyone is primary. And we got to do that. We got to build, I always said, we got to build a tech industry. We have to build entrepreneurial opportunities. We have to create, business opportunities for the millennials. We're not doing that. And so this is really not a solution. The solution is to build a robust economy, an information economy, and I hope it happens soon, but I don't see it yet.
All of these problems are intimately related to each other. They're interconnected. And there's a word we use called problematique, that you can't solve one problem without solving all of the problems at the same time. So you're absolutely right. If we really want to make a difference in terms of impacting the problem of homelessness and poverty in the state, we have to build a bigger economy, one that actually produces prosperity at every level and abundance. We have to have a mindset and the capacity to grow very, very big. And I think that that's something we have been fighting against for many reasons because it challenges the traditional power structure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the classic things I remember is when Act 221 was in controversy back 10 years ago. One of the people who reported to the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, which was not just for venture capital, it was for social policy too, that the bankers and the capital interests on Bishop Street and who otherwise funded businesses in Hawaii were much more interested in the hotels than they were in these upstart tech companies, because the hotels were the great juggernaut of cash flow from outside. And therefore, they would not make loans. They would not make investments in local tech businesses. They wanted to do the proven thing of supporting the hotels and tourism. And I think that's a huge mistake. Those are our capital. That's our capital.
That's
right. That's our money. And it goes only to creating low jobs, low minimum wage jobs, in the hotels, as if we don't want people better employed because we need them to work the service jobs in the hotels. That's what I got out of it.
Well, there is nothing wrong with preserving and expanding our tourist and hospitality industry. That's a staple here. But the elasticity, the capacity to grow that industry by leaps and bounds is not here. There are limits to that. So our real battle is not to lose market share across the world and to enhance what we have. But what we've got to do is use that capital in areas where we do have elasticity, in technology industries and so forth. We're very good at attracting new young businesses and lower levels of venture capital at the incubator level to start off new companies. But what we're not able to do, and we need the capital for, is to sustain growth and sustainability of companies that can become traded on the stock exchanges and compete globally. That's what we really need. And in a sense, our government needs to be the biggest agency to go out across the world and find that money and open the floodgates for free market enterprise.
Yeah, and I think here in Admissions Day, that's a very salient point. It's what do you want to call it? Connectivity. Hawaii must be connected with the rest of the country. It must treat itself as a state. It must conduct business as a state. It must invite the people of other states and countries to come in. It can't isolate itself. I feel we are in a period of isolation. You know, fine, fill up Waikiki with tourists, but otherwise, let's get isolated. Well, Wall Street doesn't appreciate that.
That's right.
And if Wall Street doesn't make investment here, our economy is going to shrink. I think it is shrinking. So what we need to do is get connected. How about closing statement? Go ahead, whatever you think.
Well, our problems are not isolated, as you say, and we can't solve them by keeping them in isolation. What we have to do is take a look at the things we need at the ground level and see how they're impacted by high-level policies for the building of the economy, for the unleashing of the tremendous entrepreneurial talent that is out there when government gets out of the way. And when we do that, we're going to see that we'll have prosperity for those everywhere, at the top and all the way at the bottom, and Hawaii will be a much better state. And I'm just so proud to be part of Hawaii and the United States, and wish everybody a wonderful Statehood Day this year.
Yeah, and I would echo that last thought. I'm happy and delighted to be here. I think this is a great state, great people, great prospects. I'm also happy to be in the United States. I'm incredibly patriotic. I always was, and I always will be. And I'm really sorry that people don't like being connected with the United States. I hope they reconsider that, because this is the source of all things for our state, and we really have to be connected. Thank you, Keli'i.
Well, aloha to you, Jay,
Aloha
and
to
to
you.
our viewers.